Welcome to episode 87 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be chatting about all the latest travel rules, and there's a lot of them. The Swiss Magic Pass, the best new kit for next winter. Plus, we have some snow reports from around the Alps, and we're going to be finding out about another location you can ski outdoors in England. Well, I have to jump in, listener, and congratulate Dave Riding, who on Saturday recorded the first ever World Cup win in alpine skiing by a British skier. It really is a phenomenal achievement, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And my entire congratulations to Dave. And listener, if you're interested in finding out a little more about Dave, I recommend episode 55 of the Ski Podcast. We interviewed him back in May 2020, and here's a little snippet now that gives you an insight into his character.
I'm not really a person that really chases the limelight, to be honest. I'm not doing it for the limelight or for money or anything like that, because I'm not bothered about the limelight. I just do it because I have my personal goals, and that's enough for me. Some people live for the limelight and want to stay in it as long as they can. I'm not bothered in that. It's not for me. So much stress comes with it as well when you're trying to be in this like whatever, and you're pushing yourself. And no, I'm from up north. We don't chase the limelight.
But I'd like to start off by thanking Switzerland Tourism for sponsoring the podcast. Switzerland remains the simplest country to go to. They've recently announced there's no test on entry if you're vaccinated, and if you've got children, there's no extra rules in place for the under-16s. And if you're looking for something new, they have a great bucket list of experiences you can try. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Now, I do put a lot of time into the podcast, and Switzerland tourism support does make a difference. And I'm very pleased to announce there's been some recognition for that, as the Ski Podcast has been nominated as Best Winter Sports Podcast in the Sports Podcast Awards. And I'm really very proud of that. We're up against podcasts from broadcasters like the BBC and brands like Vans. So it's a major achievement. The Ski Podcast takes up a lot of my time. Kept my mental health in check last winter when we couldn't ski. So later on the pod, I'll explain how you can vote if you want to. And that would be amazing. Now, my name's Ian Martin. I'd like to introduce my guest today. Firstly, I've got Simon Burgess, who's joining us directly from Switzerland. He was previously on the show with his report from Rays in the Lake District in episode 73. Hi, Simon. How are you?
Morning, Ian. I'm good, thanks. And it's nice to be back.
Excellent. And remind us where you are today.
So I'm currently in Vercorin, which is in the Val d'Anniversaire in Valais, Switzerland.
Cool. Okay. Well, we'll talk about that later. We also have Martina Diaz from skiguru.com. Hi, Martina. How are you going?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, welcome to your first time on the show. Look forward to talking to you about Italy a little bit later on. And we've got a regular Al Morgan from Ski Kit Info joining us as well, who's hot off the train from Slide up in Telford. Is it still held in Telford?
It is, yeah.
And just remind us what Slide is.
So Slide is the UK's kind of action sport, winter sport really is the focus. Trade show looking at the hardware. And this year they combined it with the outdoor trade show. So it was a bigger show, more people there, more kit on exhibition. And yeah, it's like being a kid in a sweet shop. It's pretty cool.
Cool. Well, we look forward to hearing what you have to say about that. Now, sadly, I was hoping to have been skiing in Switzerland since our last podcast, but as regular listeners will know, I like to travel by train. Unfortunately, the French travel ban wasn't lifted in time for me to take the Eurostar. So the last time I skied remains Les Menuires in December. But let's start by asking my guests when they skied or snowboarded last. What about yourself, Simon? Given you're out in the Alps, when I imagine it was fairly recently.
Yesterday on snow in Vercorin, and hopefully I will be on snow when we finish recording today.
Nice. What are the conditions like in Vercorin at the moment?
It's been really nice. Probably about a week ago, the whole valley got dumped on with snow. I was over in Grements and it was beautiful. And then we've just had a week of glorious sunshine. And Vercorin, because it's northwest facing, it's done a really good job, and their snowmaking, the piece are perfect.
Excellent. Okay, that's really good to hear. And what about yourself, Martina? When were you last on snow?
I think end of the year, just before the turn to the new year, in Pila.
In Pila, in Italy, in the Aosta Valley.
Yes, in Aosta Valley. Yeah, it had rained for 3 days before, And it was horrible. But
Okay.
it was nice to be there, but there were queues. I never saw so many people in the mountain.
Okay. Well, I hope that will you be getting to go out there again?
In February, if everything goes on well,
Okay.
nobody gets COVID, we're there.
Okay, excellent. And Al, I suppose I'll check in, but I'm pretty sure that you haven't been yet this season. Is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I'm sure that time will come. Now, Katie hasn't been able to join us live today, and that's Katie Crowe from Battleface Travel Insurance. But I did manage to speak to her yesterday about all of the latest travel changes and travel rules. There's certainly a lot of them, so let's have a listen to that conversation now. Right, it's great to have you back, Katie. I think you had a bit of time off over Christmas, but it's great to have you back on the podcast. There have been lots of changes since you were last on the podcast. Shall we? Let's try doing it country by country. What about the UK? What are the key changes that we're looking at there?
Hi, Ian. Yeah, it's great to be back. I think just worth saying that the blanket good news is that the ski resorts are open across Europe, which is fantastic. So yeah, on Friday, the 7th of January, fully vaccinated travellers returning to the UK no longer have to test for COVID-19 before they travel, which is excellent news. And then from Sunday, the 9th of January, rather than taking a PCR test on day 2 of arrival, returning travellers can now take a much cheaper lateral flow test and self-isolate until they have the result, which is brilliant news. Much cheaper option than the PCR.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's that dropping the pre-return test, as you might put it, because so many people, I think, were very nervous are going to test positive in that. Maybe they get stuck in the country they're in, etc. And, now that takes that sort of peril out the way. And I think, I've been reading this week and I've tweeted about this, that it's even been suggested that day 2 return test, it's obviously been dropped down to lateral flow now, but maybe that will be removed as well for vaccinated travellers.
As you say, Ian, I think dropping the test that was required before returning back to the UK has given travellers that peace of mind now that they can go away and have their holiday, have their trip, and then not have to test before coming back to the UK. I understand there are more announcements coming with regards to the day 2 test, the lateral flow day 2 test, but no news has yet hit.
Yeah. Okay. And the other major change, which has happened since we were last together, and since the last podcast, hooray! The end of the travel ban from the UK into France. So we can travel if you're vaccinated now. I wondered if you'd like to kind of elaborate on what the situation is with boosters and how it's going to affect children. I know this is a complicated area.
Absolutely. As you say, such amazing news that the French government saw sense and that basically, despite closing its borders to non-EU travellers, announced that it would be relaxing its entry conditions on fully vaccinated travellers from the UK from the 14th of January, which was just brilliant for all those people wanting to go skiing in France. So fully vaccinated Brits and their children no longer need a compelling reason to travel to France. Travellers and their children from the UK are required to take a COVID-19 test in the 24 hours before their arrival in France. This can be either a PCR or antigen test. And young children under 18 do not need to prove they are fully vaccinated. They just need to prove that their accompanying adults are, which is really good. So
It's a strange one, that, isn't it? Because that was one of the first questions that cropped up. Essentially, the way the wording is that children kind of inherit the vaccination status of their parents. So if their parents are double vaccinated, then for children, it doesn't matter what their vaccination status is as far as going into France is concerned. It's easier to get in now, but it's still, there are complications. I mean, my suggestion would be, if you're thinking about going to France, make sure you have a booster, because the rules are changing about that. Just simply being double vaccinated will depend on how long ago you had your second vaccination.
So in order to obtain the new vaccine pass, a complete schedule, so 2 doses or 1, depending on the vaccine, will be required. And starting the 15th of February, a booster dose will be required 4 months and not the existing 7 months after the previous dose for the pass to remain valid.
My strong recommendation is just get that booster, because you don't know when these things are going to change. You don't want to end up being about to go and discover that because your second vaccination was 5 months ago, then you're not able to get in. What about the pass sanitaire for children, Katie? What's the situation there?
Absolutely. A really important point, Ian, is that everyone over the age of 12 needs a pass sanitaire to enter most public places, which includes restaurants, cafes and ski lifts. Vaccinated children aged 12 to 15 or their parents can apply online for an NHS COVID pass letter, which is then posted out to them. And according to The Independent, British travellers over 16 will be expected to be fully vaccinated and should be able to access proof of their jabs through the NHS app.
So if you're single vaccinated, my understanding is you can still go through that process to get the pass sanitaire where you have daily tests.
But yeah, you can still do a daily test 24 hours before wanting to enter a venue that requires the COVID pass.
Yeah, but it's not so necessarily the venue, it's to use the lifts as well, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The simple answer to all of this is if you're double vaccinated, you can travel to France without a problem. If your children are double vaccinated, great. But if your children are single vaccinated, it is still possible to ski and get a pass sanitaire at present by having daily tests. So hopefully that will remain the case. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, as time passes, more and more British children are going to have double vaccinations. It's less likely to be an issue.
Exactly.
What about if you're looking to go to Italy, Katie? Do you have any info on what the situation is there?
Yeah, absolutely. So travellers going to Italy must demonstrate their COVID-19 vaccination status and don't need to self-isolate on arrival if fully vaccinated. They need to fill in a passenger locator form and have evidence of a negative PCR test taken within 48 hours before going into Italy, or a negative antigen test taken within 24 hours before entering Italy. So quite straightforward there.
Quite straightforward for adults, but there is an issue for children. Unfortunately, we've had to cancel our February half-term trip to Italy because our children will only be single vaccinated. And to go skiing in Italy, it's now like a 2G system. You've got to be double vaccinated, and we weren't able to do anything about it. So that's a bit frustrating.
I understand the Super Green Pass measures are going to be reviewed by the 31st of March. When it's possible that they will be relaxed. Yeah.
What about, Austria? It's the same. I don't think there's any change in relation to, children. They can get their Ninja Pass over there, and which I believe the testing is free. So a bit easier for children to go skiing in Austria. What I like about Switzerland, and I've been mentioning this the whole time, is there just are no issues at all. If your children are under 16 and you want to go to Switzerland, there is no additional testing or proof to get any pass sanitaire or health pass or anything like that. They can just go skiing. So Switzerland definitely advantageous relative to the other countries. I think what seems clear to me, Katie, is it is so complicated. You've really got to make sure that you're aware of what the latest situation is.
Absolutely. It's really important that you check on the FCDO website and you check all the entry requirements to your country of destination and take out the relevant travel insurance. As you know, Battleface offers winter sports cover, and I'd really recommend that travellers take out the necessary protection before their trip. Talking about Switzerland, exciting news this morning that the press have confirmed that fully vaccinated international arrivals or those who've recovered from the virus will no longer be required to present a negative test before entering the country, which is brilliant news.
Essentially, it just brings the cost down. Everything that brings the cost down, is much better. So that's really good news. And it's been suggested this morning to me that Austria are introducing this as well, but I haven't been able to second source it anywhere. But that would be really good. Essentially, the World Health Organization said today, and I sent this out as a tweet, the World Health Organization has recommended lifting or easing international travel bans. It's ineffective at trying to suppress the spread of the Omicron variant. So the less testing, the fewer rules, the better. And then we can, just talk about, skiing instead of like how you get in and out of countries and all the hoops you have to pass through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we go further into the season, I'm sure things are going to be more relaxed and everyone's going to be able to enjoy a fantastic skiing holiday, which we all need.
Yeah, good. Well, I really hope so. Thanks for joining us again today, Katie, and hopefully next time you'll be able to join us live on the podcast in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks so much, Ian. Pleasure to be here.
So that was really interesting, and I'd like to thank Katie for joining me for that. I'd also like to point out that she had has her own award nomination in the Trav Media Awards. She's been nominated for a PR campaign that she ran. And also, you might be interested to know, listener, that Abby Butcher has been nominated for the Best Exclusive in the Trav Media Awards. And long-time listeners will know that she was on the show in episode 66, talking about the Verbier fiasco, the flight from Verbier that never really happened, that all the newspapers were talking about. So well done to her, and I hope she wins that one. Now let's listen to a few snow reports. Simon already just told us what the situation is like in the Val d'Annevière, but we've got a few others to listen to.
Hello Ian, it's Dave Burrows from Snow Pro Ski School. I am in Saint-Cergue in the Jura, which is just the set of mountains that's just above Geneva that you fly over as you come in. We're here every Wednesday with an international school group, and I am here with my fellow instructor Stuart. Hi Stuart.
Hello.
I'm also here with Max, but he's too shy to be on the camera, and Stefan's in the toilet. So that's not going to work. So how is the snow? Snow report from Saint-Cergue. Saint-Cergue is like a 2-lift hill. It's essentially a massive dry slope. How is it here?
Yeah, well, it's not too bad actually, since it's been cold for the past week, and I mean really cold in the negatives. The snow's stayed and it's still pretty skiable. So if you're interested in going out for a ski, I definitely recommend Saint-Cergue. If not, you can go higher up. It's a little more windy and a little chillier, but the snow is just as good up in La Dole.
Yeah, so you can go up to La Dole and then it continues on to the French side into La Rousse, doesn't it? But normally we're based in the Porte du Soleil, and the Porte du Soleil has been, the conditions have been magnificent for the last. We had that amazing powder day, didn't we, on Monday?
Yep.
And then after that, I'm sure you boys have been doing some touring and stuff. But since then, it's been just like high pressure, blue skies.
Blue skies and sunny.
And
it's
just perfect conditions for clients. They absolutely love it, don't they?
Perfect conditions for skiing and a beer afterwards on the slopes.
Exactly. Yeah. So there you go. That's our update. A little bit of snow is due for tonight, and then it goes back to high pressure. So keep up the good work, Ian, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Hello podcast listeners, thanks for inviting me back. Long-term listeners in the show will A, know that I used to host a podcast with Ian Martin, and B, know that long-term listeners in the show is one of Ian's favourite catchphrases. Now, I've been asked to do a snow report from Le Clusaz. Quick update on my personal life. I thought you'd be interested. I've bought a house and I actually am officially a homeowner in France. It's wonderful. The snow right now it is Friday the 21st of January. The pistes are in fairly good condition when they're being groomed and really looked after. The temperatures are cold, so it's staying nice, and yeah, it's really good groomed. Off-piste is a bit difficult. Some places it's nice and chalky. There are pockets of powder if you're really prepared to go. We haven't had snow for quite a long time. I'm not sure there's much necessarily in the forecast, but there's always adventure to be had. It's been great to see loads of people back from the UK out on the slopes. I don't see as many in the Clusaz where I am, but they definitely are coming back. Clients that I work with have been reporting to me that everyone is so stoked that guests are back. What's going on in Merivale is brilliant, how they're welcoming everyone home as if it was their home. It's their ski home for lots of people. So anyway, the pistes are good, it's cold, the snow's here. Come and have a good time.
Hi Ian, this is Babsi from Surfhaus in the Tyrol's. We are 2,800 meters high. As you can see, bright sunshine, weather conditions are amazing. Lovely snow, we went off-piste. They're expecting more sunshine for the next couple of days and then some more fresh snow. Absolutely amazing. Feeling very lucky to be out here. Okay, bye.
Right, if you're out there and you'd like to send us a snow report, they're very welcome. I'm particularly interested in snow reports from Italy, Austria, the Pyrenees, and North America. But a little closer to home, we mentioned Rays earlier, where Simon skied previously in the Lake District. You can also ski in Northumbria in England. And I was lucky enough to have a little chat with Nigel Sanger from the Allenheads Ski Club. So let's have a listen to that. Right, I'm delighted to be joined just now by Nigel Sanger, who is chairman of Ski Allenheads. I first came across Allenheads in a local paper. I think it was a Hexham something or other. But Nigel, welcome to the Ski Podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. And you, Ian?
Yeah, I'm good, but I suspect you've been skiing more recently than I have. Have you been skiing in England recently?
Yes, at our local ski club at Allenheads, yes.
Excellent. And just tell us, so where is Allenheads then?
In southeast Northumberland.
Okay, and where does that position it? Somewhere near Newcastle, is it?
Yeah, so if you draw a line between Carlisle and Newcastle, and about halfway along and go down about 20 miles, you'll find Allenheads nestled in the northern Pennines.
Right, excellent. Well, we did a feature a little while ago about the Rays Lift in the Lake District, and I found that really fascinating. What's the situation with Allenheads then? How do people get up the slope, and how long is the slope coming down?
We've got two drag lifts. They're very old tractors that pull these big thick ropes. They're about 100 meters long, each of them. So that gives us 200 meters either 100 meters either side, and then we can use the whole of the space in between.
Right. Okay. Excellent. And go on then. Tell us what's the snow cover like at the moment?
There won't be very much at the moment. Most of it will be gone by now. So a couple of days ago we had enough to be running ski toes for 2 days, and it was very popular for those 2 days. And then the rain came. Once the rain comes, then it more or less washed out. Right.
What's the altitude there then?
It's not very high. Probably about. I'm guessing. I'm guessing. I'm not going to make this one up. I probably have to look that one up. But it's not particularly high. But what is good is the hills around it are quite high. So it's like a horseshoe of hills around the top, and it more or less dumps the snow down in this field. So a long time ago, whoever founded the club identified a really good location at Allenheads. And actually field in Allenheads that seems to just collect the snow.
Right. I mean, a lot of ski resorts tend to claim that they've got a microclimate. It sounds like you're claiming a special microclimate for Allenheads as well.
It is quite unique. You could be driving along. You come along from Hexham, and there might be nothing in Hexham. You get to our house at Slaley here, and you might see a bit of snow, and then you get across to Allenheads, and there might be 4 or 6 inches of snow.
Okay, so if someone was in that area, or even if they're not and they're just desperate to do a bit of skiing, how would they know that there's snow firstly, and how would they know that you're open, and would they even be able to go? Is it a private club?
Well, they'd have to become a member first. That just to cover us for insurance and all the other things we need to be looking at. That we've got a website, so the easiest thing is to go on the website, and then you can find out whether the ski toes are open. There's also a Facebook page, and that works quite well.
Yeah. Okay. And once you've, how much does it cost to become a member?
So everything we do is the cheapest we can possibly run it. So it's all done by volunteers. So for a family membership, if you do the early bird, that's £50 for the family, or £70 if you don't. And for an individual member, £25 or £35 if you don't get the early bird.
And once you've joined, is that unlimited for the season then? Whenever you're open, you can go along?
Yeah, that's it. You just ski as much as you want to. We've had so much interest this year that we've had to have another level of membership, which is a restricted membership, which will be off-peak times. But in reality, I think anybody who joined would get the chance to ski.
Okay. Now, that's really interesting. You've got a lot of extra interest this year. Do you think that's because of the challenges of going overseas, or do you think it's perhaps because last year, we covered a lot of people on the podcast skiing in Wales, skiing in Northern Ireland, skiing in England, etc.? You think people are more mindful of the fact that you can ski within the United Kingdom?
I think lockdowns had a lot to do with it, to be honest, and people are just itching to get out and do any kind of activity they can. The membership always peaks and troughs depending on when the snow comes. When the snow comes, we get a lot of members, and then there'll be some leaner years where there's not so many members, and then there'll be a year like last year where you could have skied for more or less a month. It just depends on what's happening with the snow at that time.
Yeah. How many days might those drag lifts be running then, do you think, in a typical winter?
Oh, that's incredibly variable, Ian. And I think with global warming, I wouldn't be able to put a finger on it. But I think last year you probably would have got at least 30 days of skiing from what I saw from the snow conditions up there. Another year you might only get half a dozen days of skiing. There's absolutely no guarantee with it. The other thing is, even though the snow might come, because it's all run by volunteers, there's other considerations we've got to take into account, like who's available to run the tows. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds great. And if you're in the area, what I'll do is I'll put a link to Ski Allenheads in the show notes, to the website and to the Facebook page. And I'd like to thank you, Nigel, for joining us, and all of the volunteers who help make that club run and give people, a chance to get a few turns in, even if it might only be a little bit when they might not otherwise be able to. So thanks very much, Nigel.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
That's your part of the world, isn't it, Al? Have you ever been there?
Yeah, so when I was pretty wee, I did ski at Allenheads, and then also in Weardale, there's a ski hill there. And actually, I used to go and hike and snowboard down in the Cheviots. You can do quite a lot in Northumberland. It's pretty excellent.
Okay, well, it sounds interesting, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the Allenheads Ski Club, so you can have a look at that. Now, Simon, I mentioned had skied in the Lake District, and Simon, you are gradually working your way around the entire world, as far as I can see, for your skiing. But the last month or so, you've been exploring Switzerland and using the Magic Pass. And I wondered if you could just explain to a listener who may not be familiar what the Magic Pass is.
Yeah, well, I would argue that the Magic Pass is probably one of the best value season passes that you can get in the world. My particular form of skiing, snowboarding travel is I tend to look for multi-resort passes that allow me to go to a few different resorts on a trip. And I was speaking to a friend on Twitter who pointed me in the direction of Griment's, and I came across this lift pass, the Magic Pass. And if you buy it early enough, so normally in May, it goes on sale for 399 Swiss francs, which works out at about £320. Now, for that £320, it covers 40 ski resorts throughout the winter, which all seem to lie along this one long road in Switzerland, and you either go up the valley to the left or you go up the valley to the right. And
yeah, we're talking about the Valais region of Switzerland, aren't we? So essentially, I think it's the Rhone Valley. Is that right?
Yeah, it's probably one of the easiest road trips you'd ever do. So if you were looking for a multi-resort ski trip, like everything's just off this one road. And to put it into context, your 40 ski resorts for the winter, it also covers summer operations, not for skiing, but you can visit 21 of the resorts during the summer for hiking, mountain biking. A lot of the resorts have thermal pools that you can add on as like an extra. So I've had some fun visiting some of those. But to put it in context, I visited Saas-Fee on the trip, and 6 days in Saas-Fee was 369 Swiss francs. So if you're going to do more than 6 days of skiing in a winter, you're easily going to make your money back. So I would highly recommend it. I've visited some nice resorts, some big ones, small ones. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I've skied some of the resorts in that area, because I'm pretty sure that, as you say, you're working your way along that valley, and we'll find out shortly how many of those 40 resorts you've been to. But I think it's quite a lot. But that certainly is value for money. I mean, if you talk about £320 for a lift ticket that covers 40 resorts for the whole of the season, and some summer things as well. What about, let's just, tackle, I don't know if it's the elephant in the room or whatever, but, Switzerland is widely regarded as being a really expensive place just to spend any time at all. What about that factor, when you build that in? How important or not have you found that?
Yeah, you've definitely got to consider that. For example, when I was around Anzer and Crans-Montana, I stayed below the resorts, a 20-minute drive up. There's free parking in Anzer, for example, and I think my 10 days there was about £500. I had a little apartment, and I could cook for myself. And I think if you're planning a long trip, it's definitely a good idea to plan ahead. I knew Swiss supermarkets can be expensive, so I brought some essentials out with me, so I didn't need to spend £5 on a pot of Nutella. So it's just about planning ahead. I've kind of mixed it up. At Christmas, I stayed in a really nice apartment because I wanted to be in a great place. The hotel that I'm in Verkeren at the moment is beautiful, so you can find some really great apartments, but there's also budget. So it's down to you and your scenario.
Okay, well, let's start with, you've been to, I'm thinking you've been to a lot of resorts. I have been following your trip on Twitter and social media, and you made me very jealous because I know you've been out there. Because when did you actually get out to Switzerland?
Just before France closed. So I think it was December 18th. I was on the Eurotunnel.
Yeah, so, Al was talking about feeling jealous before, but this is, you're around the end of your 5th week or something like that right now.
Yeah, and I'm coming back within the next, 7 days. I was meant to be here a little bit longer, but it's been a good trip and definitely a nice stint out in the mountains. It was needed after last year, definitely needed.
Hey, I know where you're coming from, and I know you're a very keen skier. And the fact is that you've been able to build it into your job. But if I understand it correctly, from what we've been following, you're a teacher, and your head is very understanding. Is that right?
Yeah, honestly, I moved to the Lake District. I ended up in a school that's very supportive, and I just went and spoke to my head teacher, and she was very kind enough to allow me to have this time to go skiing, which isn't normal, and so I'm really appreciative of that opportunity.
Yeah, well, you've been certainly taking advantage of it, and I think perhaps one of the things that COVID has given a lesson to everybody is that life is there to be enjoyed while you can and to get the most out of it, and you're really doing that. So you're in Verkeren at the moment. So that's in the Val d'Annevier. So just to describe it to me, most people arrive into Geneva. You're heading off down the Rhone Valley, past Lausanne. You keep going. You go through Sion, and up to your left is Crans-Montana, and up to your right is the Val d'Annevier.
Yeah, that's correct. It's close to the town of Sierre, probably about 30 minutes down the valley, and probably about 40-50 minutes down to Sion. Yeah, and it's a beautiful valley with a range of really nice ski resorts, all within 20 to 30 minutes. And Verkeren tends to be quite central to that. So 20 minutes from here, you have Grimentz and Zinau. Half an hour, you have St. Luc, Chandelin, and then on the other side, as you mentioned, within 40 minutes, you're at Anzer or Crans-Montana. So you could definitely use this as a base to take in quite a few different resorts.
And Verkeren is as you go up the valley from Sierre, it's kind of, I want to say, on the right-hand side as you go up. It's kind of the first resort you come to, is that right?
If you're going from your direction, yeah, it would be on the right, and it's the first one.
Yeah, and would you describe it as being a good base for the Val d'Annevier ski area then?
Definitely. I think you are centrally located, as mentioned, to St. Luc, to Grimentz. So you can use it as a base to get about. But more than that, it's a nice resort in itself. I've spent the last 2 to 3 days here. It's a small resort, about 35 kilometers a piece, but it doesn't quite tell the whole story. That in the right conditions, there's some nice runs that go through the trees. Like the rest of this valley in general, there's opportunities to go for a bit of a walk or a hike and get some off-piste in. I'm quite fond of it as a village. The village is really nice as well. So it's been a nice base for the last few days for sure.
And it links in with the rest of the ski resorts, because the ones that that I am more familiar with are Gruments and Zinal, and regular listeners will remember that I went out to Zinal trail running back in the summer. I would love to see it in winter as well, but it links into all of those different other resorts, does it?
There are buses that you can take to get between the different resorts, that if you don't want to, mess around with parking prices or anything like that, it's possible on public transport. For example, if you just wanted to get to Verkeren by public transport, you can get the train to Sierre. From Sierre, a short bus, and then you can be at the chalet cable car, which will take you up to the village of Verkeren. So it's possible to do without a car as well.
Yeah, and what I remember about, I travelled by train. I've been trail running twice. I stayed in Saint Luc a couple of years before. Is that what's beautiful about that is when you get off at Sierre, the buses are scheduled to line up with the trains, and you know that they're going to be on time. So you get there, you've got enough time to walk with your bag round off the platform onto the bus station, then one goes straight away. And if you want to change, I can't remember where the change point was on the buses, but you get to the midpoint, and if you're continuing on to Zinal or if you're going to Saint Luc, again, you get off that bus. Another bus goes within 2 or 3 minutes from there. So it all links up, really well. Okay, so that's where you are at the moment. And where else have you been just now? I don't know if you'll be able to fit it into this conversation with 40 resorts, but what were the highlights so far?
So I started in Layson, which was absolutely beautiful. As a resort, it's linked by bus to, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but Les Mosses or Les Moses and La Lécherette. I really enjoyed those two resorts. So that there's no lifts in La Lécherette or Les Moses. It's all surface lifts, but it was quiet. The pistes were beautiful. I'd love to get back there. Like, it was early season, so they needed a bit more snow, but they'd definitely be a couple of the resorts that I'd like to check out again. I then moved on to Slopestyle, where I did Saas-Fee and Saas-Almagau. I put a video out on YouTube this week about my first impressions of Saas-Fee, and I wouldn't say it was my favorite resort that I've been to, and I've gone through some of the reasons for that, but I loved Saas-Almagau. They've got a beautiful, I think it's run from the top of the resort right down to the bottom, all on red grade terrain, and the pistes were perfect there, very quiet. Onzer and Crowe-Montana, I did some touring at Crowe-Montana, just in their rando park. That was really nice, because that's also an add-on to the Magic Pass. It's 145 Swiss francs for 100 days of use at Crowe-Montana. So I decided, because I was only going to be in the area a couple of days, I would do some splitboarding. Gruments, Zinal, I think probably up there with my favorite resorts I've ever visited. I think every lift, you've got somewhere that you can walk to get into some pretty nice off-piste. They've got a free ride zone specifically at Zinal, which was beautiful. And then a morning at St. Luc, which was really nice, beautiful sunshine. And then I'm hoping to get back there in April.
Right. It sounds amazing. I'm super jealous. I mean, a few things you've mentioned there, the ski touring in Crowe-Montana in the Rando Park. I went there in December 2020, I think it was, just managed to get it in there. And it's, I really enjoyed it there. It was very quiet, as I'm depending exactly when you were there as well. And Gruments, Zinal, listening to you talking about it, having run around that area, I'm really keen to get out there in winter and have a look at that as well. I've got a feeling, so I'm going to have to get you back. There's so much to talk about. We'll have to get you back again, maybe at the end of the season after you've, did you say you're going back to the UK and then back out to Switzerland again later?
So the plan is Easter holiday. I'll be back out trying to maybe tick off a couple more of those resorts that I haven't quite managed to get to yet.
Cool. Well, I mean, that's really, really interesting. I knew about the Magic Pass before, and those details I'll drop into the show notes as well. So, listener, you can have a look at that. So thanks very much, Simon. Really appreciate that. Martina, we're going to come to you now.
Sure.
Now you mentioned that you were in Pila over New Year. You know, Italy is somewhere I was personally really looking forward to going at half term. Sadly, my children are only single vaccinated, and the Super Green Pass has come into play now in Italy, which means that we just can't get them double vaccinated in time. But I would really love to spend more time in Italy. You've been in the Aosta Valley for quite a long time. Do you have a place out there?
I have a place just 10 minutes from Courmayeur, 20 from La Tuile, and half an hour from Aosta. So it's great to go skiing everywhere too.
Right. Yeah. So those different resorts, you mentioned Pila. So if people aren't so familiar, most people know where Chamonix is. You go through the tunnel, you come to Courmayeur first, and as you drive down that valley, then you've got La Tuile over to the right, Cervinia up to the left. And
Cervinia more. You have to pass Aosta for Cervinia.
Okay, is it right? Okay.
And then you go to the left.
Yeah. And the town of Aosta, you've got Pila above that. So what's your favorite place to ski out of all those Aosta Valley options?
I like the three for different reasons. I like Courmayeur it's pretty small as a resort, but has good off-piste. But really, with my kids, I'm not skiing off-piste. But the views there, you're just by the Mont Blanc, the Monte Bianco, showering there. The views are amazing. And the food is just to go and eat there. Then La Tuile has really nice piste. It can be cold. So if it's all pretty open and there's nothing to stop the wind. So December can be freezing there if it's cold. But it's really nice and it's connected to La Rosière.
Well, I've been there when I've skied in La Rosière on holiday and gone over. The connection isn't so good between the two. For any kind of intermediate skier, it's fine. Our kids are there's a long drag lift that you have to go on, which is a bit too challenging for the kids. But amazing hot chocolates over in La Tuile. That's the main thing I remember. Sort of hot chocolate where you can stick a spoon in it or just like stand upright in the hot chocolate.
I bought some for doing home. We were doing it yesterday. It's great. It's really thick.
Pila, you obviously ski there.
It's the first place we went by chance. I rented the first time when my kids, one was just 3 and the other one was 4. Like the eldest one skied in Portillo before he was 2. But then we have a couple of years without skiing, and I rented a place in Olomont. It's one of the small resorts of Val d'Aosta. That's because I look in the map and say, I'm not going to spend money in a big resort for them to start doing a couple turns. And we went to Olomont. There was no rentals for their size. There was no teachers, and I was trying to teach. I had my little one screaming the head off, and like, oh, this is not going on well. And somebody told me, or go to Crevacol or go to Pila. And we just went down to Pila. And from there, we got to know it. And then the next year, we stayed outside of Aosta in Pont-Soise. It's just under the motorway. And we always rented there a flat for a couple of years, 5 minutes from the gondola, no?
Yeah, I mean, I went to Aosta and stayed there in the town and skied up in Pila. And I know that Pila, I can see how it could really work, for beginners and improvers. And in fact, there's a British company called Interski who have really been struggling over the last few years with all of the COVID changes, etc., who have always focused on that area in Pila, taking school groups out from the UK. And I like the idea that you can stay down in Aosta. They've got a very efficient, fast gondola lift, haven't they, that goes up to the resort from the town in the valley.
18 minutes. 18
right,
minutes.
there you go. Yeah, and I love the fact that down in Aosta, food was good, value, is excellent. But they have like a Roman amphitheater as well that you can go
they have.
Visit,
it's the biggest city in Italy for ruins. It's the Rome of the Alps. It's called. They have the door, the Pretoria, La Porta Pretoria. Then the Arc of Augustus. It's a really lovely city. It's a city. It's not a town.
And we mentioned with Simon the potential, costs of being in Switzerland. I think it's almost the inverse when you talk about Italy. You can go out and just be so surprised about how
I was spending. This apartment was 400 euros for 1 week. And then you have a big pizza for €6 on the mountain. Like, you cannot beat that.
And so you mentioned Courmayeur as well. I mean, it's slightly different in Courmayeur, a bit more shishi. I think you get a few people going from, Milan and Turin up there. But obviously it does go very high, and you can access actually the Vallée Blanche and ski down.
That's from the other lift. There are 2 lift companies there. One is the Skyway Monte Bianco, and the other one is the Courmayeur, whatever it's called. Yeah, right. The Courmayeur one has the 2 lifts out of town. One is the Armani funicular that comes out from town via Roma. You go down and you have it. The other one is the Balbany Lift. That's another funicular but old that goes to the other side of the mountain. So Courmayeur has the front side, that is the Planche Croûte and Col Croûte, So it's the front side, sunny side. And then you have the Balbany, is the back. That's a bit more wild, and it's a bit more in the darkness, but beautiful, and less people. Lots of people that go there. It's a bit more difficult too. And then from there, from the top, you can do lots of off-piste if you want.
Yeah.
And you have the third lift, that is another company, it's Skyway Montebianco, that's a rotor gondola that turns around, like the one in Engelberg, no? And has 2 stations. The top one, from there, you can connect to the Chamonix, the panoramic Mont Blanc lift that goes from Courmayeur, from Punta Helbronner to Aguil du Midi. And from there, you start. But starting from Courmayeur is easier to get into the Vallée Blanche.
I mean, I have done it before, actually. You start slightly lower down, but you get a different route in. But, you know, I have a bunch of friends who live out in Chamonix who regularly go over to Courmayeur to ski, particularly if it's bad weather, because you've got more options in the trees over in Courmayeur, and often you can have a different weather system, you know, on the other side of Mont Blanc.
Usually you have better weather in Courmayeur than in Chamonix. Plus, it's cheaper to eat, much cheaper.
Yeah, excellent. And so, I mean, that's really interesting. You know, I do, you know, I have skied most of those resorts in that area, and, you know, I've been there in summer as well. You know, been trail running through, you know, Courmayeur, and stayed in some of the refuges over there. I think listeners might imagine that you're Italian with your accent, Martina.
No, I'm Argentine. I will be Italian next year. I will be Italian. I'm already have the date of the audience. So my dog is Italian because it's much cheaper to cross him. It's 25 euros against 180 pounds every time. But next year we'll be Italians.
Okay, but you're from Argentina, so you know, have you skied in Argentina?
Yes, Las Leñas was my base, Bariloche, Cerro Castor, that's Ushuaia, southernmost city in the world, and Chapelco, and then there are smaller resorts, and then in Chile too, because it's just the other side.
But only 5% of our listeners are from North America, from Canada or the States.
The Americans is lots of Americans go down to ski. In September is all Americans. On both sides of the Andes. So it's a big market.
Excellent. Simon, you put your hand up just then. You wouldn't surprise me if you skied over there. Have you done that?
Yeah, I went to Argentina, to Bariloche, I think maybe 2014. And I was just going to say that once you're there, it's actually quite an affordable place to ski. And again, some great terrain. Cathedral is one of the most beautiful ski resorts overlooking the lakes, and there's a 7 lakes drive, and you can take in a few different ski resorts around that beautiful part of the world.
Excellent. You know, we'll tick off all the different resorts you've been to if we have enough time. Excellent, Martina. Well, that's really interesting, and thank you very much for that. When will you be out in Italy again then?
February for half term.
Maybe you can send us a snow report when you get back and let us know, you know, how it is. That's brilliant. Thank you. Grazie or gracias, whichever.
Gracias. Gracias is very Spanish. I'm from Argentina. We eat this. Gracias.
Right. Let's move on to Al. We missed you in the last episode, Al. I wondered firstly, though, and I probably should have asked you this in the green room beforehand, but did you listen to the last episode? We had Rob Rees did a report on the visit to the Stöckli factory.
Yeah.
And my question is, do you know how to pronounce Stöckli or whatever it is?
Well, I'm Northern. It's always been Stockley, but it's either Stockley or Stockley. But yeah, and then because you had a Sarsfield on a sheet, and she said it a different way. And yeah, it's a brilliant brand. It's like Kessley skis, and some people call it Castle, and you know.
Yeah, well, Rob actually sent us through a little clip on how to pronounce it properly, so let's have a listen to that.
Hi, Ian. This is Rob here. It is Stöckli, because obviously it's a Swiss company. As I said, they're in that little village of Malters, just outside Lucerne. So it's a very local business, and it was started by Joseph Stöckli, and he basically started selling skis out the factory gate.
Right, so there you go. Definitive answer to that. How you pronounce insert correct name here. Right, Al, I mentioned earlier you've been up to Slide, the industry trade event earlier this week. What can you tell us about what you've seen this week and what's new, what's coming up for next winter?
How long have we got?
Well, we don't have a sole episode for this, but you're going to have to summarize. Yeah, what are we looking at?
It is pretty exciting because it's looking at next season's kit. The show didn't happen last year. The whole industry came together, and it was combined with the outdoor show. My background's climbing mountaineering, so just for geeking out, it was nice. But one of the most positive things for me was just how so many of the brands are focusing far more on what they can do to reduce the environmental impact of ski soft goods, hard good production. Brilliant, fantastic, from how they power and heat factories to little things, what they do with when they're making skis and then they're trimming them, what they do with those offcuts. Can they put them into the heating system? Can they recycle some? So it's brilliant to see it going forward. We're not at the ultimate goal yet, but there's some really big steps. Really pleased to see that. And then there was a really interesting innovation from Head Ski. So people think about ski bindings as being there for safety, and lots of people, might worry about knee trauma. I personally know quite a few people who've got damages. I know a lot of people that ski, so it's a slightly skewed perspective. But the original safety system in bindings was to stop bone damage, so spinal fractures in the lower leg, and it basically got rid of that overnight. But what we've not seen hugely is development in protecting knee ligaments. There's an International Ski Safety Society, there's a binding that came out of some guys there called the knee binding, but it never really took off. It was pretty limited in its application. But Head have made huge inroads here with a new protector binding to reduce ACL and just knee ligament trauma by more than 50%. So that's really exciting.
So it's something to do with how the binding is designed that means it frees in a different way that helps protect the ligaments. Is that it?
Absolutely correct. So, you can super geek out on the dynamics of what causes ACL issues. So we're not going to do that. But in a short term, a succinct way, the heel of the binding can slide and rotate out of the way to reduce that strain on the ligaments in the knee. And it's just pretty impressive. It's a hard problem to solve because you want the binding to still perform fantastically well on the down. And I think that's part of the issue, and they've nailed it.
And when you say nailed it, I mean, you're obviously in an exhibition hall. How can you know how it works, how it performs on the snow in those?
So I have been involved with the International Ski Safety Society for, best part of 15 years. They have meetings every few years. I've been to a lot of those. I see a lot of the research in the background. And from looking at the designs around this binding and known various iterations that have gone before that, at the moment, they are on a really good footing, excuse the pun, to solve this issue, or certainly reduce the trauma that we see in skiers. And we'll see this filter out across the market. Other brands will start to do some of the things.
Okay. And what's that method called from Head then?
So it's the Head protector binding, and they do it in free ride version. They do it in a regular downhill in their PR binding.
Okay.
So that's for 22-23 season. It's not out currently.
What else caught your attention while you were there, Al?
So I think I've mentioned it on a previous podcast before, but you know what? Skiing should be fun. For a few years, I've had some skis that are full on chargers, but actually to get on them and use them can be a bit of a challenge. And it's just kept going. We're seeing way more product that not only gives that full on charging adrenaline top end, but you can get on the skis at lower speeds, ski with the kids, ski with your family, and it's brilliant, and this is across all brands. I'm not going to pick out any particular brand because would be here for a long time. Combined with that, in the last 2 years, with people not being able to get lift access skiing, so they're touring, we've just got product that also performs fantastically well on the ski. Better boots. The boot fit is just getting better and better and better across all brands. It's a positive story for skiers.
Just to kind of, put that into my kind of layman's terms, you're talking about like an all-mountain ski that delivers at slower speeds as well. Is that sort of thing you're talking about?
Across the board. So you can go piste performance skis, but, wider footprints, easier use at lower speeds. But because of what we can do with modern materials and construction methods, it's amazing the broad spectrum of abilities one ski can cater for. They're still going to be specifically aimed at an expert skier or an advanced skier, but this goes right through touring, through all mountain, through free ride.
What about, I know they hand out awards for innovation and various different areas. So were there any award winners that kind of stood out to you?
There's a brand called Artelect, which I'd not come across before. So this is started by a guy out in Boulder, Colorado called Trent Bush. But one of the really interesting things with Artelect, so theirs is art and intelligence. That's kind of what it comes from. But just the technicality of their products, because they look amazing. You just wear them down the street, look brilliant. And what they're doing with merino yarns, because one of the big issues with merino wool, it performs fantastically well. I love merino, but I can break merino kit. It gets holes in it. But this is way more durable, more stretch, still got an amazingly soft feel. And it's just really, it's a relatively new company. I think it's only a couple of years old, and the product is super impressive.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, that's really interesting. I've actually got a base layer from Smartwool, which is also merino. And what I quite liked about, I know this isn't anything to do with Slide just now, but I picked it out because it's a plant-based dye. And I was trying to find something that I thought would be as environmentally friendly as possible. Is that one of those innovations that is becoming more common now?
Yeah, just the whole treatment around clothing, dyes, how we're waterproofing things. But yeah, this Smartwool tops, honestly, I've tested them. I'm a big fan. I really like the Smartwool kit.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, that's really helpful and interesting as always. I've noticed a few of your articles appearing in the Telegraph as well. The top 10 boots and top 10 skis and things like that. So well done for getting those out there. I like the fact that our expert on the ski podcast is also the expert for the Telegraph, and I know your write-ups will appear in the different magazines for next year as well, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely right.
Cool. Okay. Well, I just want to remind listeners that if you're looking to hire, personally, I recommend In Sport. I've got my own boots. I mentioned in episode 86 about their boot dock service. Also like the fact you can change your skis during the week. And a factor that might be important to you, although hopefully it won't be now, is that you can cancel at any time as well.
Cancel your booking up to the last minute and get all your money back using the Refund Now button. With Intersport's new option, you're in control.
Right, let's move on to the Winter Olympics. By the time you listen to this, or you're listening now, it'll be less than 2 weeks until the Beijing Winter Olympics. So let's have a little check-in on progress. There's been some great success in the Paralympic World Championships. A lot of medals won, but that's looking very positive. John Allen Butterworth, who I interviewed a while ago, represented GB for the first time. So that was really interesting. You can listen to my interview with him if you look back over previous episodes. And there's also been some good success for our Winter Olympians. Charlotte Banks, Emily Sarsfield picked her out in our last episode as, a real potential medal prospect. Well, she's had a couple more firsts since then. She's number one in the world, and it would be a big surprise or a big disappointment if she didn't pick up at least something at the Olympics. Katie Ormerod's been showing some form, picked up a fourth in slopestyle in Mammoth. Kirsty Muir was another one that Emily picked out. She came fifth in slopestyle, also in Mammoth. And Katie Summerhays, who you'd probably describe as a veteran athlete now, although when I first met her at the Manchester Ski Show, she was 9 years old. And Pat Sharples, who I've interviewed before, had brought her in as one of the potential stars of the future. Anyway, she came sixth in the slopestyle in Font-Romeu. Charlie Guest got her best ever result, 13th in Schladming. Also, in other Beijing news, I noticed recently that Team GB athletes have been given burner phones, apparently, to avoid being spied on, and told not to say anything negative about their Chinese hosts in case they get arrested. On a more positive note, it looks like we'll be joined by Ski Sunday's Chemi Alcott in our next podcast. I think direct from the BBC studios in Salford, and she'll give us a final rundown on those Olympic hopefuls. Right, we'll move to the close now. Reviews and comments are always welcome, wherever you want to leave them. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, social media, or by email. Here's a few we've received since our last episode. Doug Newman said, great podcasting. I'd like to thank Phil Gordon from the Legends of the Brand podcast, who mentioned our excellent podcast or interview with Pat Sharples. Janet Barnett said she's been listening to the ski podcast since the 2018 Olympics and is still very much enjoying every episode. And don't forget, you can always buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/a ski podcast. All cuppers are appreciated. I'd like to thank Coral, who bought me one. She said, the only thing to cure a pining for the mountains when you can't otherwise be on them. And Paul Son also bought me a coffee. Thank you. He said, I've been enjoying your really useful podcast. Do you have any advice on this for Americans who fly into Switzerland? Do you know what the current process is if you drive into France? Are there border checks? As you need to show a test. Now, this question gets asked a lot on Twitter. I'm constantly asking this one, not just for our American friends, for British people. If you fly into Switzerland, what's the situation going into France? In my experience, I've crossed that border driving from Geneva Airport into France I have no idea how many times. It could be in the hundreds. And I've never been stopped going into France. In the other direction, I've been stopped because the Swiss want to make sure that you got the vignette to use the motorways, but they never asked to see my passport or anything like that. I wondered if any of my guests today have got any experiences of crossing that border.
Similar to what you were saying, when I arrived in France at the start of this trip and drove across the border into Switzerland, and the only stop was for the vignette to use the motorways.
Martina, can I ask you, what about going through the Mont Blanc tunnel back and forth between Italy and France?
Yes, at least last time there were signs. We went through. The Carabinieri are there. They're going to stop us there. Nothing.
I mean, I think sometimes you find that the smaller borders, they can be more officious. In the border, when you drive through Valoncines in the direction of Martigny and vice versa, going from Chamonix in the direction of Verbier, for example, I've been stopped there on several occasions. And in fact, remember Tony McWilliam in the interview I did with him, the guy who founded Faction Skis, you can listen to that in the back catalogue, told me that, he snuck through his first ever production of Faction Skis, covered by a blanket in the back of his vehicle from France into Switzerland. Also, when I was doing natives parties back in the day, we often used to get different sponsors on board. And I remember one time we had Extreme Energy. I don't know if you ever came across that drink. There was a time when Red Bull wasn't allowed to be sold in France. It's hard to kind of imagine that now, but because of the contents, it wasn't given permission. So we had this energy drink, which was packed full of taurine and caffeine, etc. But it wasn't, I think if I remember correctly, it wasn't allowed in Switzerland, and we were taking it over to a party over there, and John Tregell, our event manager, had to hide all of that in the back of his van. Shouldn't admit this now, but you're not going to be able to, they're not going to get us now. Okay, well, I hope that helps you, Paul. As I mentioned before, the Ski Podcast has been nominated as Best Winter Sports Podcast in the Sports Podcast Awards. If you would like to vote for us, listener, just go along to sportspodcastawards.com. It takes a couple of minutes, and I would really appreciate it. I'd like to thank the many people who voted for us already. Now, I enjoy all feedback about the show, so please do email me. You can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at the Ski Podcast. But for now, I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for sponsoring the show, and thank my guest today, Simon.
Thanks, Ian. Lovely to be here.
Excellent. Martina.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And Al.
Thank you once again, Ian. It's always fun.
Excellent. And finally, listener, thank you for joining us, and goodbye.